It was a long trip to Manchester, long trip to Salford, and an even longer game as Welsh fans. Wales suffered, or Scotland celebrated, a record result in this fixture that has traditionally been incredibly close. It was close getting the Six Nations after a blowout in a WHV warm-up last year. Scotland won by a record margin, 38 points to 8. Let's begin with reflections. How are you feeling about this looking back now? A few days on.
As a Welsh fan from like a parasocial perspective, I thought about it and then calmed down about it and then watched it back again and became infuriated about it again and then like calmed down a bit and then watched back the highlights again and just felt so deflated about it. It's properly like wound me up and got under my skin, this game, the fact that this happened. Like before the tournament started, when we were talking about these two teams together, and you asked at the end, like, what's your inclination? What's your gut feeling? Like, if you remove everything we've just said. And I just thought, I just have a weird feeling that Wales are just going to build up some sense of momentum and so on. And I think with Wales, they keep teaching me to like stop building up false hope, you know? Because the thing is, this should be a really good team. Like, I look at the bones of like the players in his team and I'm like, I know what you bring to international rugby that's good. I know what you bring that's positive to this team. And yet, there's so many times where you go into a game and you're like, oh, okay, Wales should be competitive in this game. Or I don't expect Wales to win, but I expect them to come within 5 points. Or I expect Wales to win by 50 in this game. And they've so far underperformed on so many occasions. And there's certain players who have been brilliant consistently throughout the whole thing. And I'm sure that people watching can figure out who those largely are. And yet, I don't know, from a Welsh perspective, it's just so hard to think about how few victories have come off this. And obviously, the reflection of that game should be how brilliant was Scotland, because they were.
Yeah, and we will get onto that very much.
We will, but I need to deal with the emotional part first, because this game is, as I say, it's so under my skin. How about you?
So, Sean Lillicrap said something, that this World Cup is not Sean Lynn's World Cup as Wales head coach. That's the next World Cup. And this one is a build-up and it's working towards something. Do you remember the talk on the last World Cup?
Wasn't it the same with Cunningham?
It was Wales are going to look to compete here and maybe get out of the group, beat Scotland, that was it. And then next World Cup, they were very open. They wanted to make the semi-finals. Wales were very open. They wanted to be a top 14.
They had a 4-year plan, didn't they?
And that was the whole goal, right? They're now very likely, unless there's a huge upset somewhere, not going to get out of the group.
They're staring down the barrel of a poor stage exit.
And this has been... It's a result and a reflection, and the game very much shows this, of all the issues the WOU have had in how they've treated the women's game. And some of those, admittedly, I think are being addressed in these plans that they've put out last week, which I think are suicidal for the men's game. I think genuinely could kill Welsh men's rugby, certainly at the professional level, potentially permanently. But I also think a lot of the plans for the women's game are positive.
Every cloud,
And... I also think a few of the problems aren't being solved, and I just hope that something later comes down the line to look at that. So, Wales have no depth whatsoever, right? Like, Wales have, I'd say, 20 players who are at this level, and 3 or 4 who are at the next step up, right, of competing with teams like Canada, like New Zealand, like England. You drop below that, or you end up in a situation like we had on Saturday, right? And Wales had a very particular game plan to take on Scotland. And then some of the players they need to execute that game plan just don't exist, right? They don't have a Maud Muir or a Sarah Beckett or, a Mo... a lot of these players that were key for Gloucester Hartpury in this game plan that worked, right? And I think, this is one of the frustrating things about this game is, I think as a broader game plan, what Wales were looking to do worked. And then, once you get into the minutiae, none of the detail was there in place. And this comes back to something I banged on about this for 3 years now. Wales do not have enough support in the backroom. The WOU, initially under Cunningham, right, That team was run entirely by Johan Cunningham as the head coach, who was also acting as the forwards coach and the scrum and everything else.
And defence coach, wasn't he, as well?
Well, yeah, then Mike Hill was forwards coach.
Yeah.
His previous experience was he was Bath's Academy's forwards coach. And Sean Connor, who was the Dragons Academy skill coach, right, who was Back's an attack coach. Those are two people who, frankly, like, for the level they're playing at now, have been over-promoted. And it's not to say they aren't good coaches, but, like, they don't have the requisite experience when you compare them to the people in amongst, like, Ireland said we compared them to a bunch in the past who've all worked at like Premiership or international women's level, or even Scotland, right? And like Steve Shingler, who is Welsh, who almost played for Scotland, admittedly, but like Welsh coach brought in there, had been coaching Ealing in the Championship, so like still to a very high standard. Then brought over, and had Rachel Malcolm talking about, and we'll get onto this, like how much detail he's brought to their attack, right? And Wales are lacking that detail. So Wales get into the 22, right? And they've since brought in Ben Flowers, contact skills coach, a short-term contract just for the World Cup, and Dan Murphy as defence coach, the first ever defence coach the women's team have ever had.
Which is
he
crazy.
was scrum coach with Gloucester Hartpury, so he's basically been brought in order to do both jobs.
Yeah,
right?
the WU have cheapened out. They've gone, brilliant, we've got somebody who's a scrum coach and has a bit of a background as a defence coach. We'll just get them in so we don't have to pay two people.
They very easily probably could have brought in Rhys Oakley, who was the defence coach of Gloucester Hartpury, and Dan Murphy as a scrum coach, right? Bring in a lot of them, bring in like his entire back.
Rhys Oakley, who is Welsh, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a Welshman who never won caps for the national team, I'm sure this is a bit of a dream job to come and coach the national team.
However, they cheapened out, and so I think Sean was probably left with like, you can hire one or the other. And he went, well, Dan's better at doing both jobs, so we'll bring him in. He can cover both seats.
Ben Flower has been very highly talked of with the impact that he's had, and that is that collision coach role. Like, fair play, like, you know. And you could kind of tell that Wales looked a little bit better in contact. That's one thing that you can say, especially with the maul and scoring try off there.
But
so there's a positive.
I think then you get into the 22, right, and Wales have no detail whatsoever. And it's become a huge issue as the players just honeypot around the ruck, and we don't see players set up into shapes. We don't see players set into like positions in which they can carry off. We don't see like any sort of like organisation going on there. There's very, very little pinning players on the bottom of rucks, looking to engage them, looking to keep them down, looking to create gaps around the fringes. We saw a couple of times like Beth Ann Lewis or Cecilia Tuipulotu or whoever pop up on the short side and make a great carry. Then Wales just wouldn't use them again. Then they just wouldn't pop up. Then they just go back to like pick and goes that weren't working, or they work open side where all the Scottish attackers are. Like the defenders are rather. Like there was so little attention to detail, and Wales continue to bang their head against the wall when what they need to do is clean out the coaching panel behind Sean Lim. And it might be that he thinks Sean Connor's a great guy. Like, Sean Connor, by all accounts, really good skills coach. But it feels to me, as an observer, over-promoted to be attack skills and
the thing is,
backs coach.
In two departments, we're looking at someone who's overstretched here. So we're looking at Dan Murphy is covering both defence and set piece, right? And we're looking at Sean Connor as both attack skills, game plan coach, kicking strategy coach, like all of that, right?
Like
rather than somebody
goal kicking, all of it.
Even if you have like another specialist, like forwards-based attack coach, right, who can then drill in, all right, this is what we do from these situations. This is how we get our attackers, our biggest carries into good situations, who can then collab with Sean Connor on that. That helps. Or alternatively, if you let Sean Connor focus on the skills, which he's done a good job on, that is his department, right? If you then get somebody who can collab with him on, right, here's the attack, here's what I'm going to map out that's different, that's innovative, that nobody else is doing, which is going to suit our players, which is going to get Jazz Joyce into loads of space to score tries, which is going to get Cecilia Tuipulotu carrying against the smallest players. Like all of this stuff that like Wales have so many players that you can pick out and go, they should be brilliant at this level. And we've just not seen as much from them. And
here's the thing, right?
I think it's on the WU, as you say.
If a player loses a professional contract and is forced to become an amateur, that can cause a social media upstir. Because people will go like, I can't believe these players aren't professional. If they prefer to put out as many contracts as Scotland or England or whoever, that will lead to a backlash. If they don't hire a coach who wasn't there in the first place, no one talks about it. And yet that is the issue right now. The issue is they're cheaping out on the coaching staff, and this team is not well prepared.
Look at the Wales men's team. There's fucking millions of them in the coaching panel. There's so many of them.
Rob Howley's still employed as a coach.
Exactly. What's he even
Genuinely,
doing?
he could be working with his team.
Yeah, why isn't he?
Like,
if he's got a general job to oversee, like Wales, and he's worked with the men's under-20s before. Like, if he has something that he could possibly add as an attack coach, as a game plan coach, it's something that he can add where he can collab with Sean Lynn, who set up the circus in Gloucester Hartbury, right? If there is something the two of them can figure out together, why aren't the WU asking him to do that? And going, we will chuck you an extra few bob if you work with the women's team as well.
I think as a broad reflection on Wales this game, right? I think broadly they had a game plan that worked, which was to kick a lot of ball, which is to not play in their own half. Really smartly, Scotland deployed Helen Nelson in the backfield, which is something they do and don't, but they normally play a much lighter backfield, and were able to shut a lot of that down. And
same with Lisa Thompson in the backfield as well.
Lisa Thompson spent a lot of time in the backfield, second half in particular.
Yeah.
And it then led to Wales being nullified, right? And where they were hoping to make 15, 20 metres off a kicking battle and get into the opposition half, instead they were ending up on halfway or even back where they came from. Fran McGee's try at the start of the second half comes from Flaky George from a kick-off, sending it long, looking to launch a kicking battle where they're hoping to get some territory. And Nelson and the rest of the Scottish team, Raleigh, etc., just don't give in at any point and keep playing until eventually it's Flaky George that makes a mistake and they surrender territory. Scotland play it, and moments later, McGee's going over in the corner. That comes from Wales losing a kicking battle, right? And they had a game plan that was working a lot of the time. Wales generated enough opportunities to win this game, or to at least be in this game, right? And if you look at it, right, Wales had 922 entries and they scored 1 try, plus 1 penalty. That is pathetic.
It's awful.
Frankly, it's awful.
As a team who's looking at quarter or even had semi-final ambitions,
I think there's 2 key moments in this game, right? Which obviously Fran McGee scores in the first minute, and then Wales get down the other end, and Alex Canada scores 1 more, right? And suddenly the atmosphere changes. Scotland back down the other end, McGee scores again, and they're a bit like, okay, right, we're going back and forth, back and forth. This is going to be the mode of the game, right? It's one team getting down the opposite end, they score, then the other team scores, and it's going to be back and forth, this kind of tight thing. Wales then get back down moments after McGee's second try, and they kick a penalty. And I thought that was a huge mistake because you were looking to keep in the game. And what it told Scotland is we're worried about your defence, right? Yeah. So the next time that Wales get back down there, after Brevin Holden's just scored, Wales get back down into the 22, Wales are on the try line, they are 5 metres out, they're going for them all, and Scotland hold them up and then exit successfully. And I think that penalty was a huge boost for Scotland because it was kind of like 4 points they didn't concede rather than 3 points they did. And then moments later, they hold out 1 set, and genuinely, Scotland then just didn't look like they conceded for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And it was such a momentum swing, because it was like, Wales's maul was so on top in those early stages, and their scrum was so on top.
Especially when you consider Flaky George's line kicking was superb.
Yeah.
It was outstanding, especially in that first half. She was on fire.
It's a critical thing, right? And this is something I hope with Alex kind of taking the captaincy, it would change from Dalla Valle, who I think was always quite as an aggressive captaincy style,
sure,
and was very conservative as a captain.
Which is never a bad thing.
No, it doesn't. No, not necessarily. There are games and situations that call for it. And I was hoping Alex kind of being a more aggressive figure, kind of in the way she plays, would perhaps change that. Wasn't the case. There are moments, if you're going to be a team that wins, where you have to go for the kill. Yeah. And generally, you think of those coming in the last 15 minutes. Sometimes they're in the first 20 minutes of the game.
Yeah, it's like, how do you kill them off?
Yeah. If you don't get in a situation where you are scoring a try and making them think, okay, this is an open game, it's going to be we score, they score, we score, they score. And instead, you give them a chance of going like, oh, okay, no, we're just on top, we're just leading here.
Yeah.
Then that becomes a different situation. Especially considered like Scotland picked up 3 forwards injuries in the first half. Yeah. And we were saying this at half time, I kind of felt a bit like Wales could have taken the second half with their forwards already being on top, and if they're more depleted. And instead, Wales blew their chance early in the half, then conceded straight off the second half after losing a kicking battle.
Yeah, Wassell had been stitched up for blood and come back on. Bonner was carrying a shoulder injury. She'd gone down several times. A couple of times throughout that. Obviously Scotland went 6-2 on the bench, which was extremely smart and really, really paid off for them. So, fair play to Brian Easton, calling the bluff on that. Yeah. But on the flip side, you look at by the 80th minute, if you think about where Scotland won the game, if you pit the 2 packs against each other and how they played, it's close to neutral. I'd say Scotland was slightly better in the pack, right? They absolutely tore Wales a new one in the back line. I don't think there's a single player in the Scottish back line who didn't totally outplay their opposite number, by a distance, right? And even players who played particularly well.
I say Nell Metcalf, I thought was
you're right.
The one exception.
I would take Nell Metcalf. I think Nell Metcalf was brilliant, especially because you mentioned as well, Helen Nelson kept trying to engage kicking battles with Wales, which is quite a rare strategy in the women's game at international level. I think it was really, really smart the way they went after it, because Flaky George is the sort of 10 who is brilliant until you squeeze her a little bit, until you put a bit of pressure on her, and in which case, if she makes one mistake, she often compounds it.
Flaky George isn't a 10 who bosses the game.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at it was the final, wasn't it, of the PWR when Mohan got a yellow card. And In that period, Flaky George was silent and didn't hit the game by the scruff of the neck at all, which is what you want from your 10 in that situation. Yeah. However, then Mo Hung comes back on, and then she just goes back to being her regular self and is brilliant and is one of the best players on the pitch.
Yeah, 100%.
And wins the game for them.
But for Scotland doing that, knowing
that's the thing, is Wales probably needed someone to go like, okay, I'm taking the game by the scruff of the neck, which is exactly what Helen Nelson did.
Yeah, knowing that there's her and there's young Nell Metcalfe at the back, who was brilliant, who did a really good job and did the chip and chase, which almost paid off. And honestly, there is a world in which that slightly nullifies what Scotland do and makes them go, oh, we need to stop kicking at 15 because she's going to weave round us in some way or another. So fair play to Nell Metcalfe. I think she did her best given what was thrown at her. However, what I was just saying, yes, Scotland completely outplayed Wales in the back line. However, there was a point about 10, 20 minutes in where Alex Callender's just scored that try for Maul. Scotland have scored a couple through their back line. And as Welsh fans, we were going, right, okay, we need to target them up front. We need to see how many opportunities can we get where we can get them 5 minutes from the try line and just drive into them. Yeah. And there is a world in which they try that and it fails every single time. But it was very clear they weren't going to get round them in the back line because there was one break that Jazz Joyce made down the sideline where Kira Bevan did the little dummy kick and then freed her down the sideline. And that was fine, but I don't think there was really a point where you thought, oh, that's going to be a try. There was Courtney Keat made a really good break in the second half, and there was no real support coming around her. And Scotland just managed to shut off the Welsh backline, even when they were moving forward at all times. I just think Scotland had us for pace and just worked smarter rather than necessarily harder.
This comes back to the thing I was saying about Wales being reliant on players that don't exist, right? Yeah. They're reliant on having a big ball carrying back rower, which they don't have. They've got an excellent back row, but
it's just Al Cal as the carrier.
But
she's the only carrier.
Al Cal is a exceptional second carrier. Yeah, she's not your primary number 8 who gets you that meter under traffic. Yeah. That's not her game. And it's not a criticism of this, just no. She's brilliant at what she does.
She still makes so many more yards than she needs to.
Yeah. They don't have a Maddie Foenati, do they?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have a Jade Conkle.
Yeah, a Kai Baker.
Whoever, who can come in. And that was a bit of an issue, whereas felt like they needed that extra carrier. Cecilia Tuiposi came on and added a bit of that.
Yeah.
I thought Donovan had a great game, incidentally.
She was, I think, the best player when she was on for Wales.
Yeah. Nell Metcalfe was the other one who I would say came out
those
in
two,
positive.
Those
were the two who came out in positive, right?
Yeah.
You've got some like Alwa Pearce, I thought had a mixed bag, had some very good moments, some not so good moments, but it's 20, she was faded out of the game a couple of times, that happens, that's fine. She's a commitment to the future, fine. But there is this kind of issue of the backline, right? Which Welsh backline just have no spark about them. No. They're all perfectly solid, and that's it.
Yeah.
And Jazz Joyce, we talked about quite a lot, but you look at McGee's second try, right? And Jazz comes in to cover fullback, that's fine. It's the situation here. She comes in. You then have her, and she doesn't make a decision here when it pulls around, and it's a lovely move by Scotland, right?
Yeah.
Nelson spots this so far out and goes okay, it's just Delavalli. She's the only one who's got to take out. Delavalli fills in on around the post, essentially the second forward out. And so Nelson just looks to target her, knowing if we can keep her in, if we can not allow her to drift at all, then we should be able to fix Keat and score in the corner.
And most importantly as well is her communication with Fran McGee behind her, who's in her boot looking to attack the right-hand side. And instead, I imagine it's like a countdown.
Sure.
It's in 3 seconds, we're going to flash blind at once. Because if we do this quick enough and call for the ball at the right moment, Jazz Joyce isn't going to spot us. Yeah. She's not going to then move across and go back onto her wing. She's instead going to be caught in two minds. And as you say, she's not actually marking a channel here. Yeah. She's just marking where the ball ends up sailing across in between Bevan and Delavalli.
Yeah. And so McGee picks the line perfectly. You've got the whole deception of everyone being in motion, everyone kind of initially being in a blob around here, and then suddenly picking different lines. It's lovely. And then McGee's timing is exceptional. The way she fades out and is able to get into shape to accelerate onto the ball. Yeah. She's not taking this as she's adjusting, as she's turning. She's taking it as she's accelerating. Yeah. So it allows her to go past.
That's a winger who understands her fly half inside out.
Exactly. That's someone who's
more
trained
than
together.
The sum of the parts.
It was the thing Rachel Malcolm says. A lot of people are writing us off because of the contract situation, but ultimately we know how tight we are. We know how much we know each other as both players and as people. Yeah. And that really showed. As with the details we mentioned about Stephen Shingler, just knowing these things inside out.
With that, the MOR try really comes to mind. And that was the dagger as a Welsh fan, was seeing that happen. And that try I don't look at and go like, oh, that was poor by Wales. I look at that and just go like, that's just a brilliant attack by Scotland. As Wales are starting to fold out, they've not fully filled out every single gap yet, and Cecilia Tuipulotu hasn't quite got her head on a swivel. She's just looking at the breakdown. And Emma Orr is the whole time watching Cecilia Tuipulotu and going, I've got a potential mismatch here, but I've got to take my moment at the exact right split second. And clearly there is some kind of call that she makes to Katie Mattinson, who's on at 9 at this point, and just scythes through that gap and goes onto the outside shoulder of Cecilia Tuipulotu in that seam between forwards and backs and finishes it beautifully.
It comes back to what Scotland are doing, right, which is that they are looking at different options all the time. Contrasted to Wales, who are basically looking for the same options all the time in attack, because they have like 2 things to do in attack, which is play wide or play tight. Scotland, their wide players are looking to come in and run tight angles.
Yeah.
Their tight players are looking to spread out wider and hit wider channels. So like Rachel Malcolm had a great run down the wing, right? Yeah. Which like you don't even think of as an edge forward.
You've got like Lana Skells and Alice Martin are really comfortable in those wide channels.
There's a few like real bullocking runs both of them made in those, like both of those wide channels and tight. And so you've got these players who are thinking about the game. Yeah. And it's a really evident thing from looking at that Scotland team, is right, you can talk about the flair, you can talk about the speed. The thing that was really clear to me is how much they think about the game.
They're all on the same page, aren't they?
Yeah.
They've got a game plan and they play that game plan.
But it's more than that. Like they are clearly like looking at the situations they're in and thinking. Sarah Roach made a really interesting point on Rugby Union Weekly that you could tell, and it's one of these things, right? But having been there in the stadium, I kind of hear it and I'm like, oh yeah, no, of course, yeah, I did notice that. But didn't in the moment, wouldn't have thought to say it. Every stoppage, all the Scotland players, backs and forwards, were all coming into little groups and talking. The Welsh players weren't. They were all standing about and just waiting around.
Yeah, catching a breath.
And yeah, you saw that big time just in terms of the fact that they were looking up and going like, okay, these are the shapes Wales are presenting us. And that all try is like the perfect example because it's so different to all the other tries they scored, which are small passes or long passes and are like looking to be expansive. You think about McGee's last try, the third try, which again, lovely touch from Emma in there. But like that is literally Flaky George flies out of line and then doesn't commit to the tackle. Yeah. If you're doing that, you've got to come in, smash, get them to ground.
Again, doesn't make a decision.
Try and stop the ball. Exactly.
Even if it's the wrong decision, you fly up and blitz, right?
Yeah.
It forces them to just go, oh, somebody in my face, I've just got to try and flick it on now. And it means that it's more likely that they will make an error, even if it's the wrong decision. Or if you just go for a hard drift, right? The touchline's right there.
Yeah.
There's a chance that you could push them slightly closer to it.
But this is the thing, right? That was looking for Scotland like a gain line carry, right? In terms of they probably hit one out and they get on the shoulder of George or whoever else and just make a carry over the gain line, get to 22. Instead, they see one Welsh player like act up and make a poor decision, and suddenly they switch into gear and all of them are in sync in the same moment and having the same thought, and it allows McGee to score. Yeah. And it opens up a massive gap.
Sitting off on Rona Lloyd is not recommended.
If Wales had scored first in that half, that's a very different game.
It's extremely different.
Scotland scored first, and it goes on to be their biggest ever win over Wales.
Yeah, which is, again, the bit that still hurts, I think. The fact that it was 5-0, Scotland get the bonus point, Wales get nothing out of that game. So, on to the aftermath, right?
Yeah.
I will add, so you ended up fixing Badgate, running out of the stadium just after full time. And I stuck around for a little bit just because I kind of, I always like to soak in the atmosphere before the game. And I was like, I just needed 5 minutes to just sit on my own and just think about what on earth I just witnessed. And let me tell you, so we were in the same stand where a lot of the Wales players, like families and friends were and so on. Most of the Wales players kind of came into the crowds to talk to their families and friends and so on, rather than necessarily like sitting around with fans as a lot of them like to do, which is good because they have no obligation to do that. They do that out of their own love for the game and so on. It's a bonus when they do that, and amazing that they, like every other time that I've been and watched Wales before, they have done that. They have gone and spoken to every single fan, right? Whereas this time, it hurt. It really, really hurt. That almost every single Wales player that I saw like coming into the stand and talking to them was looked like they were on the verge of tears or just like breaking down. That they knew the enormity of that, and they knew how. Like you could just tell looking at the faces of the players, like how much they wanted to bounce back and just make a statement the next week. Or stood there in Wales kit, having just lost to their closest rivals. It really, really meant something. And that, as a Welsh fan, was kind of the thing that I took as some solace. Was like, these players aren't not trying, that these players have just been thoroughly outclassed, which, again, it comes down to two things, right? One, Scotland were brilliant. Scotland performed at like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, I think,
That was as well as they played for many years.
They will probably go look at themselves and say like that was one of the most. I think
in many ways that was the defining performance of the Brian Easton era.
Yeah,
right at his tail.
Rachel Malcolm essentially said that in the post-match interview where she said like, I've been sitting up at night with nightmares of Kira Bevan kicking that penalty in 2022, and today I don't think we put a foot wrong. Was essentially what she said. So it comes down to that, and it also comes down to everything we were saying about the WOU earlier, about the fact that they are overstretching this women's team because they don't take it seriously as they take the men's team. And this is sheerly at national level. I'm not even on about pathways or regions or club teams, anything like that yet. Obviously, that's a part of it, right? But at national level, they do not take the women's team as seriously as the men's team. And I know that the men's team bring in more money, and I know that's
but it isn't even that. They don't take the women's team as seriously as they deserve to be taken based on the crowds they are getting. Never mind where they will be in 5 years' time.
Exactly.
Or in 2 years' time.
And that, as a Wales fan, pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because it means that you look at all of these players, and I do look at all these players and go like, oh, as I say, you're good. I know what you bring to international rugby. And yet, I can't believe I'm looking at international rugby players and being in a world where I can go, you can be a little bit better though. You're not at your ceiling yet. Yeah. And I don't just mean ceiling in terms of like when you see an 18-year-old and you're like, oh, in 10 years she's going to be incredible. I don't mean like that. I just mean like if the WOU had actually brought in coaches for all of these departments, it would have meant that as a team, Wales look better. Yeah. And can win more games.
And Wales have some detail in any area of their game, which is just lacking at the minute.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Sean Lynn said two interesting things after the game. One was he asked if they had any positives, and he said no, which
it was a horrid day.
Yeah.
Like the showpiece day of your World Cup campaign, and you get fucking hammered. Like, you're not, as a coach, you're not going to want that.
The other interesting thing I thought he said was that there were some players who were talking a really good game beforehand and really up for it and really bouncing, who then just basically didn't play, who were just like completely lacking in physicality, completely lacking in energy. And look, I don't want to single anyone out. Like, I have my opinion on who those players are, because I agree. I think there's a few of them who there's a few players who had a couple of really great moments and then just phased out for the rest of the game. And they need players like Alex Callender, who are turning up and giving everything for every minute. Like, it's very Jack Morgan in the men's team, but
it's tuning out that voice in your head that tells you you're tired.
Yeah,
Alex Callender is like one of the best players in the world at that, as is Jack Morgan, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
like, who just like if you just watch Alex Callender play for a minute of a test match at the highest intensity against one of the best teams in the world, right? You just watch her for a minute and she's so quick back to her feet. She's hitting another breakdown. She's nailing somebody.
It was, as I recall, I'm going off the top of my head, so I may be wrong. You can put the question will come up. I believe it was 19 tackles and 16 carries and 3 turnovers, like, which is insane, especially for a team that's struggling like that.
And to say, like, watching it live wasn't as like much thinking like, oh yeah, Al Cal's having a storm. It was only when I watched it back I was like, oh yeah, she's still just one of our best players, just generally. Like, whilst I'm here as well, I should add, like, Rachel McGlockton was phenomenal for Scotland. Yeah, that I think I probably would have given her player of the match, because she was just constantly, every time Wales built a bit of momentum, she was just through the breakdown, just being an absolute nuisance. Like, every single time in the stands, like when she just like was pouring through the breakdown, you naturally stick your arms in the air and go, oh ref, she's completely legal. She's completely legal, and it doesn't look legal because she's just annoying. Yeah, and it's just like again, as a scrum half, as a fan or whoever, you're looking at it and going like, we need to get rid of her. We need to. Oh, it's not the referee's option to do that. We just need to like target her and get her on the deck. And she was phenomenal. She was so good.
Second row, Sarah Bonner, Emma Wassell, both exceptional. Yeah, Bonner I thought was just great. Just huge fan of her. Line out was a huge problem for Wales the whole way, and Bonner was so in control of that.
Agreed.
That whole Scotland back row, Evie Gallagher, quietly very good game. Yeah. That axis of Ellis Martin and Lana Skelton we highlighted before the tournament, that again, like, perfectly timed substitution, because you didn't notice any dip in Skelton's performance. Like, they brought her off just before she had the moment where she like looked a bit tired. Yeah. And Martin comes on and brings energy and brings dynamism and brings like boomfar. Yeah. So just like, you kind of can't praise them enough. Emma Orr, brilliant. Fran McGee, obviously player of the match. Obviously, like,
Lisa Thompson, decision making is so good.
Yeah, I said this on the preview I did for the Love of Rugby, that like, look, like, I am Fran McGee's biggest fan. Like, look, if Fran McGee has no fans, it means I'm dead. I want to add one other caveat to that. if Fran McGee has no fans, it means either I'm dead or she's just got a hat-trick against Wales.
Yes.
Like, those are the two circumstances now.
Yeah.
Like, that's changed slightly.
Oh, that was a hard day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When the stadium announcer was saying it's 3 tries for Fran McGee. I was like, yeah, we get it. We
Fran
get it.
McFree, as Rona Lloyd put it.
Brilliant. What is it with wingers and puns?
I know. So, overall reflections. Scotland, how far can they go?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, okay, I'll phrase it like this, right? They are in a good position to go into the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
And they are very much a team where once they're in a game, they're in a game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, Scotland are a team that I don't want to write off because they are so just together and on one page and committed and fiery, which is, again, to end this on a positive, it's what you want from a typical Scotland team.
You say
Scotland the Brave.
You don't want to write Scotland off. You know who their likely quarterfinal would be against?
Oh, England.
England.
Okay.
Unless
it would be the perfect story to knock England out of this World Cup.
Unless they beat Canada.
Yes.
In which case it all opens up.
Yes. Look, I'm cheering for whoever gets out of this pool.
Conversely, Wales now need to beat Canada at the weekend to keep the World Cup alive.
Yeah.
Do you think they have any chance in hell?
Not if they played anything like what they just did.
I don't think they will.
No.
But I think Canada are too good.
They are.
I think if they were playing a second test against Scotland this weekend, I think there's a very good chance Wales win that.
Yeah.
I think there was enough in that performance that, like, I said this on...
I could see it being a similar scoreline this weekend to the last one.
I said this to friend of the channel, Soper, after, after the game between...
Yeah. She was very sympathetic towards us. She was very good at consoling us.
In a way, someone whose team hasn't lost a World Cup game since 2014 would be.
Oh, God.
I said this to her, but like, I don't think Wales were 30 points worse than Scotland on the day at rugby, but they were more than 30 points worse at scoring points. Yeah. Like, Wales is just so bad at scoring points.
Bang on.
And if Wales can get better at scoring points, then I think they can give Canada a game. If they were playing Scotland again, I think they could potentially beat them, but they're not playing Scotland again. They're playing Canada, and I think we'll probably see Canada score early on and Wales struggle again. And I think this World Cup's going to be it very much feels like one to forget.
Okay, so with what you're saying, need to score more points. Points being the key word, right? They've got Sophie de Goody, fire with fire. Gwen Crabb drop goals constantly.
Donna Rose kicking conversions.
It's on. Canada were coming for you.